In this lesson, we're going to look to see how we can determine charges and ions from the chemical formula. Let's look at FeCl2. Because iron is a transition metal, we cannot predict its charge, so we're going to call it X for the moment. We look at chlorine, and based on its position in the periodic table, we know that it has a charge of -1 when it forms an anion. We know that we have 1 iron and 2 chlorines because of the chemical formula. So we can write 1 times X plus 2 times -1. Because it's an ionic compound, we know that the sum of those numbers must be equal to 0. From this, we can solve for X. So X minus 2 equals 0, and X equals plus 2. So now we know that the charge on iron in this compound is a plus 2. Another compound that can form from iron and chlorine is FeCl3. This is something we often see in transition metals, that they can form more than one possible charge. So in this case, we still don't know the charge on ion for this compound, so we're going to call it X again. We know that chlorine has a -1 charge on each of its ions, and we can say 1 times X plus 3 times -1 equals 0, because the sum of the numbers must be 0 for an ionic compound, which is neutral. X minus 3 equals 0, therefore X equals plus 3. Let's look at TiO2. Titanium is also a transition metal, so we have an unknown charge for its ion. Oxygen forms an anion with a -2 charge, so we label titanium as having X charge and oxygen as having -2. We then set up our equation to solve for our unknown. So X plus 2 times -2 is going to be equal to 0 because it's a neutral compound. X minus 4 equals 0, and X equals plus 4. So the charge on titanium in this compound as an ion will be plus 4. Next, let's look at zinc sulfide, or ZnS. Zinc is a transition metal, so we're going to label it X. Sulfur, like oxygen, has a -2 charge when it forms an anion. We set up our equation as X plus a -2 equal to 0. We solve for X, and we find that zinc has a charge of plus 2.